All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo sports talk and more. And I'll tell you what, I say that all the time. Rarely does it mean and more, but today it is and more. More on that in a second. I want to thank everybody, whether you're listening to this on the audio side, whether you're checking us out on the video side via YouTube. I appreciate you all. So yeah, about that and more thing. I want to tell a quick story. Then I'm going to bring in my guest today. And if you're a New York Yankees fan, not going to want to miss this episode. You know what? If you're a baseball fan, you're not going to want to miss this episode beyond just the Yankees. But anyway, about, I don't know, maybe a month or so ago, it's like mid to late October. I don't remember exactly when, but I'm sitting here in my home office, kind of bored and doing some work. And I wanted to throw something on TV. You know, I tend to do that a lot. I'll throw something on, even if it's just like kind of like background noise, some YouTube videos, stuff like that. And every couple of weeks, I'll check out Netflix and see what's on there. So I put on Netflix a handful of weeks ago, and among the recently added section, there was a documentary, and it was called It Ain't Over, a Yogi Berra documentary. I'm like, well, I'm a lifelong Yankees fan, man. You know, I'll check this out. Again, being completely transparent here with the intention, what I usually do, put it on, little background noise, peeping my eyes up at the TV every now and then. Well, I put this on, and within 5 to 10 minutes, it's got my attention. Like, I stopped doing all the stuff that I was working on. Maybe halfway through, I'm enthralled. An hour or so in, I'm thinking to myself, and this is not an exaggeration here. I'm thinking to myself, this is one of the best sports documentaries that I've ever seen in my entire life. And I truly mean that. By the end of it, legit crying, tears, some happy, some very sad, all the feels, sentimental. So after watching this, I did something that I'm not sure that I've ever done. Certainly not when it comes to a TV or a film thing when it pertains to this show. I go on Twitter, I see who directs the film. Then I go online and I look it up. And I see the name, and the director his name is Sean Mullin. I go on Twitter. First things first, I tweeted about it to all my followers and caught your eye at one point. And then I looked you up and I said, you know what? This is somebody I need to get on this show. Buffalo sports or not, man, this documentary moved me that much. So for everybody out there on the audio side who's not looking at a video screen, I am joined today by the director and writer of It Ain't Over, a documentary about Yogi Berra. It's on Netflix right now. Sean Mullin. Sean, what's going on, man? It's good to meet you, and it's great to have you on this podcast. Appreciate you.
Well, I tell you, man, I wish you introed all my interviews here. That was amazing. Thank you so much for that. That was the best, one of the best reviews we've gotten. No, the reviews have been incredible for the film, you know, through the roof. And it, you know, you just, you know, when you make a film, you're not really thinking about reviews. You're not thinking about anything. You're just trying to tell a great story. And, you know, we were able to piece something together that has meant a lot to a lot of people. And it's made me feel really good.
So. Oh, well, I'll tell you, it was, again, I'm being completely honest with you. I didn't know about the documentary, about the film. I literally stumbled on it, and I'm glad I did, because like I said at the top, it's truly one of, forget about baseball, it's one of the best sports documentaries I've ever seen in my life. And I mean that.
Well, we actually had some guy from one of some tech, I think it's Techno Sports or some website, some guy, he crammed all the data. He took every sports documentary in history, and he looked at all the reviews from IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes, and he put them together. And we are actually the highest rated feature film, a documentary sports film of all time. So that was pretty cool. That was pretty cool to get that. So, you know, that's a great thing about social, you know, there are some good things about social media. Sure. And that was one of them. That was one of them, is to, you know, when I come across stats like that, it makes me feel good. And like I said, you never really make these movies for the reviews, or you never really know what people are going to think. You just, you know, you go in, try to tell a great story, and just, you know, to have someone like Yogi Berra as the centerpiece. I mean, it was such a rich life to draw from. And so I felt really fortunate. You know, we got it was independently made film, and we just approached the Berra family out of the blue and said there needs to be a Yogi Berra documentary. And we went and raised the money independently, which is also strange. Most sports documentaries are commissioned by either ESPN or HBO or something like that, and so this is a completely independent production that we went out, raised the money from friends and family, approached the Berra family. They gave us their blessing. Yogi had passed away in 2015. We approached the family in 2018. like 3 years after his passing. And then, yeah, it took us 5 years to get it made, and a labor of love. And when you watch it, you can tell, though. You know?
Oh, absolutely. You referred to some reviews. I went on Rotten Tomatoes earlier and I looked up 98% is the score on Tomatometer. I'm like, holy shit. I mean, like literally doesn't get better than that. A 96% audience score. I mean, that's a Michael Jordan of documentary films right there. You know, and we'll talk about the film itself in a second. I need a little bit to know. I literally don't know much about you except a couple things. One of them, you're from Indianapolis, and we talked briefly because you said you hated the Philadelphia Eagles and Buffalo Bills. We're taping this on Monday, so it's still very fresh, a fresh wound here in Buffalo. You're a Colts fan.
I'm right
now.
Yeah, I'm a Colts fan. You know, I actually hate the Patriots more than the Eagles. The reason I don't like the Eagles is because I lived in New York. I went to undergrad and grad school in New York, and I also lived in New York for a while. So my NFC team are the Giants, and so my AFC team are the Colts. So I don't like the Eagles and the Patriots. Those are the two teams I can't stand. And so, needless to say, that Super Bowl was tough to watch. But yeah.
So did you grew up a Colts fan?
Yeah, I did grow up a Colts fan. So I've been a Colts fan from Jack Trudeau. I mean, back in the day.
Yeah, they're it's weird because it's like they shouldn't be really good this year. You know what I mean? The quarterback, you draft a rookie quarterback, he goes down, he's out for the season, but this is just a team that's fighting and clawing and finding their way to win games. Whereas the Bills, all the talent in the world on paper, this season, it's just things aren't going their way and they're finding ways to lose games, such as this Sunday in Philly, man. It's tough.
That was a tough loss. Yeah. That was really tough.
For sure. All right. So anyway, what got you into wanting to be a filmmaker to begin with? Because it fascinates me. You know, most of my guests on this show, I talk to sports media people, I talk to athletes, and it's always fascinating to me to learn about that period of time in their lives when they decide, you know, I want to be in the NFL, or I want to cover the NFL, or I want to do this, or I want to do that. When it comes to you and what you're doing now, you talk about this, you know, your labor of love, which is your career now. At what point in your life did you remember saying to yourself, this is something that I really want to do?
Yeah, I mean, I very distinctly remember the moment it happened. I mean, I had always been into storytelling in high school and everything like that, and I was always like kind of the kid telling jokes and doing comedy even in high school. But then I went off to West. I'm one of 6 kids. And my parents didn't have any money, and so the last thing my parents ever bought me was a one-way plane ticket to West Point. And so went 4 years at the academy there, and then served in the military. I played rugby at West Point, and I bought a video camera and started recording videos of my buddies doing stupid things. And I started like thinking, hey, maybe I could tell stories. And I never thought about doing it for a living until fast forward, I'm living in New York City in 2001. And I'm doing stand-up comedy at night and improv theater and stuff. And then I'm also 1 week in a month, I'm in the New York National Guard. So I was the plans officer for Manhattan in 2001. And so that didn't really mean much until September 11th happened. And then I was in charge of, the plans for Manhattan. So I was, in my uniform by noon that day. I was a first responder down at Ground Zero.
Oh, wow.
And I'm spending better part of the next 9 months down at Ground Zero. And, you're down there. And I'm just still doing kind of comedy at night. And it was a dark time. And it was just a crazy, crazy experience for me. And I said, you know what? Life is short. Do what you love. And so I applied while I was at Ground Zero. I applied to grad school for film directing. And I got accepted. I got accepted to Columbia University's MFA program right there in Manhattan. And so I went straight from Ground Zero, August of 2002. I resigned from the military as a captain. Straight from Ground Zero, and I went right to Uptown, went right up to 116th Street at Columbia, and I got my MFA, I got my master's in fine arts and film directing, and I was at Columbia from 02 to 05, and then I moved to LA in 06, and I've been out in LA. I've been out here now for 17 years, just hustling, working on all different types of movies, and working my way up the kind of sort of Hollywood food chain, and then this film has been a big success for me. So it's been a it's been a long ride, but worth it, and I do what I love, which is saying a lot.
That's a fascinating story and how you got into filmmaking and going to Columbia. You mentioned comedy. You've done some like stand-up comedy. That's a different animal. Like, what is that like? And does it, it's one thing to be around, your boys and your best female friends and, being the jokester and stuff like that. It's a whole other animal, I would assume, because I never would have the balls to do it. Plus, I'm not that funny. But to get on stage and be able to perform, I don't care if it's in front of 5 people, 100, whatever it may be, doing improv comedy, stuff like that. Talk about that a little bit.
Oh, I loved it, man. I mean, I loved stand up, and I found some success actually with it. I got repped by a company called Coastal Entertainment, which is a big management company. I started doing shows in, Jersey and Long Island and stuff like that. And so I really loved it. I was not as good at improv, which is a completely different skill set. I kept getting my head and I kept freezing. So improv was not my thing, but I was good at stand up and I loved doing it. But then I got to the point where in order to make it as a stand up comedian, you have to be on the road. You got to hit the road. You got to be on the road 250 days a year. And I just got accepted to grad school for film. So I kind of had like a bad breakup with stand up, and I was like, if I can't have you, I won't have you at all. I just kind of stopped doing it.
So you've been out in LA now for a while, obviously, moved there, I'm sure, for professional reasons. What was that adjustment like? You grow up, like I said, in Indianapolis, spent so much time in New York, East Coast, going out to the West Coast. I just had the Bills-Eagles game on Sunday. I had a couple buddies over. One of them is a friend who lives near Oakland who's visiting. I kind of talked to him a little bit about this, just that time difference in terms of lifestyle. If you're a fan of, say, the Buffalo Bills or the New York Giants, in your case, your NFC team, you're getting used to every week, them playing at 10 o'clock most of the time and stuff like that. Like the whole adjustment of living out in the West Coast. Did that take a while for you to really adjust to it?
It did take a while. Yeah. I mean, LA definitely took a while to get used to. I mean, I was definitely had New York in my heart, and so much of, especially the experiences I had in New York and all that. My father was born in Brooklyn, raised on Long Island and all that. So I definitely had a lot of New York in me, but no, I mean, you get used to it. I kind of like now, I'm getting older now too. So the 10 o'clock start times aren't so bad, especially the Monday night stuff is, that initially was always all out of whack for me, Sunday, the night games, but now it's kind of great. So no, I love it. I love it now, but it definitely, it's anybody who moves out to LA or anywhere on the West Coast, it's a different world out here for sure.
I want to play the trailer. It's about a 2-minute trailer for people who can see. You can see it on the video side. If you're listening on the audio side, you'll be able to hear it. And trust me, you'll be able to get a good sense just from the audio portion of it. So I want to play your trailer. I know you've seen it a million times. Like I said, you're about to see it for 1,000,001 right now. I want to play it because to me, this just gets you the trailer itself, which I still can't believe. Being a lifelong Yankees fan, I didn't know about this documentary until I stumbled on it. I want to make sure a lot of people listening or watching this right now that they don't make that mistake, that they don't have to stumble upon it. Here's the trailer, and then right after that, I'll be back in. We'll start talking about this documentary.
The 2015 All-Star Game features the 4 greatest living baseball players: Hank Aaron, Johnny Bench, Sandy Koufax, and Willie Mays, who are all absolutely amazing players in their own right. But I'm in the room sitting next to my grandfather, Yogi Berra, and I'm thinking, wait a second. He's got more MVPs than any of these guys. He's won more World Series rings than all 4 of them combined. And I look at him and I said, "Are you dead?" And he said, "Not yet."
One of the greatest World Series resumes of any player ever.
Hey, he got it done. He was a winner because he had all the rings to prove it.
He's the figure that was larger than life.
There's no Jackie without the acceptance of Yogi Berra.
When Yogi comes to the team, they say he doesn't look like a Yankee.
He wasn't 6'3" with blonde hair. Everything about him was kind of funny.
He was a character. He was made fun of in the New York press.
But that sort of became who Yogi Berra was, this funny little guy.
That's right. Yogi Berra.
I don't think Yogi liked it too much.
The Yogi-isms. Let's talk about the Yogi-isms.
He said, nobody goes to that restaurant anymore. It's too crowded.
When you get to a fork in the road, take it. What?
And it ain't over till it's over.
Makes a lot of sense.
That personality of his actually served to take away from his legacy as a baseball player.
It always felt wrong. It's not fair to him.
He's just a gentle, kind soul.
He was loved by so many people in this country.
Total respect for Yogi. A guy that everybody loved, not because he was cute and funny, it's because he was good and he was real.
He was the most overlooked superstar in the history of baseball.
That's an incredible trailer right there. Billy Crystal saying that's the most overlooked baseball player in history. I wanted to ask you a couple questions, then kind of dive into this documentary, but you're educating me in a way because I know how athletes work now and how they think. And I know how sports media, news media people think and how, ideas come about. When it came to this documentary specifically, Like, what's the origins of it? What's the roots? Like, what gave you, you know, the motivation, the inspiration to want to do this specifically?
Yeah. So the idea actually came to me. I was approached by two producers in the summer of 2018. It was Peter and Mike Soboloff. They're big Yankee fans. It's a father-son duo out of New York. And I'd worked with them on a previous film, and they had just seen a documentary about Mr. Rogers that came out in 2018, and that did really well. And there was another documentary about RBG that did really well. So there was a lot of like bio documentaries that were doing well in theaters. And so they wanted to know why there wasn't one about Yogi Berra. And they went to the Yogi Berra golf, charity golf event, and they talked to Yogi's sons, his three sons, and said, "Hey, how come there's no documentary about your dad?" And in typical Yogi Berra fashion, Dale Berra, his son, said, "There's no movie because no one's made one yet." So you know, we jumped right in and started meeting with the family, and we ultimately started, you know, as we started interviewing people, I really got to know Yogi's granddaughter, Lindsay, very, very well. And you know, she's just such a compelling human in every way. But you know, she kept telling me this story every time I interviewed her, every time I talked to her. She kept telling the story about how she watched the 2015 All-Star game with her grandfather, and like, you know, they bring out the greatest living players, and you know, he wasn't kind of in that group, and there's no you know, we're not saying that Yogi is better than any four of those guys. That's not, nothing about that. There's no gripes. The four dudes they brought out were, I mean, are four of the all-time greatest ever play the game. But, you know, just the idea that Yogi definitely should have been in the conversation, right? And like, how come he's not in the conversation? And it's not just that. There are other reasons, you know, he's been left out of other conversations that I can, you know, get into. Like a lot of people, I mean, I'm going to throw out one quick stat that's not in the film that will really make you think of Yogi Berra in a different way. But there's only two players in the history of baseball who finished top 4 MVP voting 7 years in a row, which is an extremely high level of sustained excellence. And it's Mike Trout and Yogi Berra. So people don't put Yogi in that at that level as a player, you know? And so those are the type of things we really wanted to get after with this documentary, you know?
How do you go about getting in touch with some of the talking heads? Because one thing about this documentary that I just loved almost as much as anything else was the roster of talking heads. Let me just throw out some of them for people watching and listening right now. You mentioned Yogi's granddaughter, Lindsay, who brings so much in this documentary. Joe Madden, one of the greatest modern day managers in baseball, period. Joe Torre, Bob Costas. I wrote some down. Vince Scully, Billy Crystal, Derek Jeter, his son, Dale Berra's other two sons, Bobby Richardson, you know, older Yankee fans definitely know who that is. Willie Randolph, one of my favorite New York Yankees of all time. Nick Swisher, Joe Girardi, Don Mattingly, Ron Guidry, my dad's favorite player of all time. Al Steinbrenner's in this. So many influential and important talking heads in this film. How do you go about getting some of these people?
You know, it was that's where the Berra family really came into play, and especially Lindsay. So what I mean, the very first shoot day we shot, you know, you'll see in the film there's a whole scene with Dale Berra writes a book about his dad. Dale Berra had some drug addiction issues, and he wrote a book about it. So that was the first thing we shot, actually, and that was in May of 19. That was the first day of shooting, and that's where I really got to know Lindsay. And Lindsay said, "Hey, listen, Vin Scully's very old. You know, we really need to get Vin." So she called up Vin Scully and she said, "Hey, Vin, it's Lindsay Berra. We're making a movie about Grandpa. You know, could we get 30 minutes of your time?" And he's like, "Absolutely, Lindsay, anything for Yogi." And that was really what happened, is everybody just said anything for Yogi. So we got Vin Scully. And then so once you get Vin Scully, then we got Mattingly, then we got Torre. And you know, once you get Torre, he's kind of the godfather of the Yankees in a lot of ways, right? And so once you get Torre, then you're talking to Jeter and some of these other guys, and then of course Girardi and Mariano. You know, all these guys, everybody. We really, you know, the only issue is we ran it about halfway through shooting, we ran into COVID, and so we had to shut down for a year, and so that was a bit of an issue. And so that kind of, we didn't get to, you know, there's a few, you know, Posada was in Mexico, we couldn't get to Posada. Reggie couldn't get to Reggie, he was working on another doc that he wasn't available, and so we couldn't get to a couple people. But we honestly, anybody we reached out to that we had the opportunity to get to, we got to. I mean, we've got to Ralph Terry, who played, you know, he pitched to Yogi, and you know, he lives 2 plane flights and a 3.5 hour car ride, you know, away from civilization out in the middle of Kansas. And so, you know, and that's about as far as you can get in America these days, 2 flights and a 3.5 hour drive. So we went to the ends of the earth to make sure that this was a full and official kind of authorized, you know, story about Yogi and his life.
And they just brought so much to this film, especially because some of the Billy Crystal and Bob Costas, especially for me, that really, those two guys really, and obviously Lindsay the most, but, you know, and Dale, but that really resonated with me tremendously. One other thing I want to ask you, but then we'll kind of talk about a little, some film specifics. When you make a film like this, obviously you said it yourself, it's a labor of love, and it's not, I know you like doing the other parts of it, but when it comes to, say, the promotional aspects of something, all right, so your film drops, you know, it's at film festivals on Netflix, and people are starting to review it, and people are starting to comment about it. Now you're getting asked to do, you know, interviews here, interviews there. Does that get a little bit exhausting? Again, I know you're not complaining about it, so that's not what I'm insinuating, you know, whatsoever, but just the promotional aspect, just like I'm sure with musicians and authors when they put a book out, you know, doing the tours, promoting in your case, promoting a film. Does that get a little bit tiring, a little bit exhausting at times for you?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely takes it takes up some of your bandwidth. I mean, the biggest thing for me is like I'm a very fortunately very busy person. I'm directing 2 documentaries right now, actually, and so you know, to me, it's taking time away from those projects is the biggest thing.
Sure.
I'm directing. I mentioned it earlier. I think I played rugby at West Point, and we won West Point won the rugby national championship in 2022. So I got official approval from the Pentagon to be embedded with the West Point rugby team for a year. So I followed them for a season. And so that'll be my next documentary. It's called Brothers. It's about the West Point rugby team. But it's probably, you know, the kind of hook there is it's arguably the most unique culture of any Division I athletic program in the country, because they have a really special thing going there. So yeah, I'm directing that now. I'm working on another documentary about Buzz Aldrin. Buzz is a West Point grad as well, lives out here in LA, and that's a fascinating one. So I'm working on all these other projects. And so the promotional, yeah, I mean, you know, this film was completed, you know, we finished this film almost 2 years ago. So the fact that I'm still talking about it, yeah, it just, I'm just so glad, honestly, I've got no complaints at all. I'm so glad it's been so well received. It's really been a real highlight of my professional and personal life.
I'm going to take a real quick break, come back. I got more with Sean Mullin. I want to dive a little bit more into the specifics, or some of them anyway, of It Ain't Over. Be right back, folks. All right, I am back with Sean Mullin, the director of the documentary, Yogi Berra documentary, It Ain't Over. Just absolutely fascinating. We were talking about some reviews earlier, and like I said, I mentioned Tomatometer, a 98% rating. That's just almost unheard of. It literally is pretty much unheard of on that site. I picked out a couple that I saw that kind of resonated with me. I'm just read them real quick, just a sentence or two on these. One review, and this is from the Austin Chronicle, says, with the help of a slew of adoring talking heads, It Ain't Over director Sean Mullin effortlessly validates his subject's legendary career through the film's zeal to restore him to his proper place. Boston Movie News said, see it. It will make you smarter, as Yogi would say. You can learn a lot by watching. I got a 5-word review, man. And to me, you'll laugh and you'll cry. That's how I felt about this, man. I laughed. There was some funny parts, some of the Yogi-isms, some people, you know, making fun of him lightheartedly, of course, you know, lovingly, affectionately, some of his Yogi-isms. A lot of that was funny. And then, like I said, it really highlights a lot of the emotional stuff from the post-career to the relationship with his wife that he had, to the fallout with George Steinbrenner, which was just incredible. And one other thing, which I want to get to in a moment. Let's go back to Lindsay, though, because like I said, his granddaughter, big part of this documentary. She comments about his colorful personality, actually kind of in some regards taken away from his legacy as a baseball player. I was blown away by her throughout this film, you know, how intimately she knows her grandfather's life, how much she cares about it, and his baseball career. Kind of, let's start there. Let's talk about that, like her role in this, and also as it pertains to Yogi, just his colorful personality in ways, and you demonstrated this in the film, kind of took away from his legacy as a player a little bit.
Yeah. So no, Lindsay, I mean, she, like I said, she's one of the most incredible people I've ever met. I mean, you know, really carrying the torch for the family in so many ways. And, you know, she also has a background in, you know, sports journalism. And so it was kind of it was this really fortuitous marriage of, you know, elements that just kind of came together. And, you know, she was not supposed to narrate the film. It's funny when a lot of people watch the movie and review the movie starts out so strongly in her point of view, talking about this 2015 All-Star game that most people think the impetus for the film was that's what most people think is like she started this, but that's something we discovered through the through the edit process, and that's how documentaries really work. You kind of start with a thesis, but you kind of let the story guide you a little bit, and so no, she's just really just an incredible person and just been kind of the best spokesperson for the film and obviously for Yogi's legacy.
Joe Torre, I mean, there's so many comments in there that resonated with me, but again, Joe Torre, a manager near and dear to my heart. All right, so we're around the same age. I actually got you by a couple of years. I'm from Buffalo, but the New York Yankees were my first love, and they always have been. So, even as a very, very young kid, I remember the late 70s into the 80s when they kind of sucked for a while, and then early 90s, and Joe Torre comes aboard, and obviously, those dynasty teams. But anyway, Joe Torre had a quote in your doc, and it says, he may be overlooked, but he certainly wasn't overlooked by the people who know what they're looking for when it comes to baseball. I loved that, and I loved the story that you told with how he met his wife Carmen, and their love story. Lindsay and the film, she shared one of the love letters of many that he wrote to her. He was again, you think of the baseball player, the Yogi-isms. He's a romantic ass dude, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think these days they'd call him a simp, right? Or whatever the kids are saying. I don't know, right?
Yeah.
They people don't talk like that anymore. He wore his heart on his sleeve, and I think that's what endeared him to so many people. Yeah, he wrote these just gushing love letters, to Carm, his beautiful wife, and he won her over. And no, that was on day one of filming when we went to the museum. The museum, I highly recommend if you're anywhere near the New York City area, go to the museum, the Yogi Berra Museum and Learning Center. It's in Montclair, New Jersey, about 10 miles from downtown Manhattan. And it's really incredible. And the very first day, the very first thing, as soon as I meet Lindsay in person, she grabs me by the arm, says, "Sean, look at this." And she drags me into this exhibit, and it's all of his letters. I start reading these letters. I'm like, oh, we have to get those in the movie. Like I don't know where they're going to fit. I don't know how they're going to fit. And, I had an incredible editor, Julian Robinson, this genius editor. And I said, hey, find me a clip. If you could find me a clip of Carm reading one of the letters, I kind of want to have one of those, but I also want to have Lindsay reading as well to kind of play off each other. So no, those letters really, there's a real emotional core. I mean, I think the biggest thing about this film is like, it's not a baseball movie. It's not even a sports movie, really. It's just about a movie about a life well lived, right? And then, that's what we've kind of been pitching it as. I mean, I know this is a sports show, but like, it's amazing how many non-sports fans, how many spouses and, women and really, really love the movie to death. We premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival in New York, and this woman from Thailand was there, and she was a guest of someone who had brought her, and she had never seen a baseball game. She had never been to New York. And she came up to me afterwards. She says, I don't know anything about baseball. I don't know anything about the Yankees. As my first time in America, she goes, I have one day left before I go back to Thailand. I have one day, and I'm going to go to Yankee Stadium tomorrow. Is what she told me.
Wow.
I mean, so just, yeah. And so it's stuff like that, it's like, okay, this film it's working on levels that we kind of could have never intended.
I can only imagine what that must feel like as a director, when you hear something like that, how fulfilling it must be. The player himself, look, 10-time play as a champion or World Series champion as a player 10 times. He won 3 AL MVPs, man, a 15-time All-Star. But to your point, it's more than that. This is like the ultimate great American success story. I loved how important Carmen was in this film to him. And again, just being so much more about baseball. Bob Costas said it's a kid's game, but I don't think he ever lost sight of that. And you get those vibes through it all. And again, you highlight a lot of his career as a player. And for me, again, he retired, I think, in the mid-60s. So he was, as a player, he was before my time. Of course, I knew growing up as a Yankee fan who Yogi Berra was, more so even as a kid anyway, as a manager. And I do remember, and this really struck me too, I remember when he got hired by George Steinbrenner, and I remember, I think it was 1985. I don't even need notes for this part, Sean, because I remember this shit as a Yankees fan. Got fired, 16 games or something like in the 1985. And for a lot of younger Yankee fans who might not know this, it really set off a Cold War, so to speak, between George Steinbrenner and Yogi Berra. And I thought you did a great job of telling that story. You didn't go to Yankee Stadium for 14 14 years. That's hard to believe, isn't it?
They tried everything. They retired his number and he wouldn't come back. And then we tell the story in the film. Tori tells a story about how when he got his first ring in '96 and he asked Yogi to come, hey, will you come to the stadium to present me with my World Series ring? And he said, Joe, I love you, and that, but there's no way I'm stepping foot in that stadium, And so it was really, he was a man of his word, I think that's another thing that really resonates with people,
One thing that I'll always appreciate about whether it's your documentary or any documentary is when I can, especially if I'm a fan of the subject, when I can learn stuff that even if I'm a fan, I don't know. And one thing that I had no idea about that I learned through watching your film was Susie Waldman being so, responsible for getting George and Yogi together and kind of mending those fences. She had a lot. So did Carmen, of course, once they got in that room and watched the film. But the point being, she didn't even, she said she didn't even know Yogi. She worked, she knew George, but didn't know Yogi. She played a central role, kind of, so to speak, in that reunion between them after all those years.
Yeah, no, it was incredible. And interviewing her was amazing. And she has some really great quotes too about baseball in the film and just about, the legacy of these players and stuff. And, she's a real national treasure for sure.
Yeah. And then another thing too, I got a couple more things, but Dale Berra, I liked him being open and honest about his cocaine use, his drug use when he was younger, and telling his story at one point where Yogi said, I'm not going to be your father anymore. Carmen's not going to be your mother anymore. Clean your shit up. And he did. And again, this kind of this is where it's just about a lot more than just sports. You know what I mean? This is life stuff that we all are around every day. I was really fascinated. I was moved by that. I thought he was very well, or represented himself very well, and the family in this film.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, that was a big piece of the puzzle for me. I definitely wanted to include as much of him off the diamond as on the diamond. I was very adamant too with my editor. The baseball is, at least Yogi playing baseball, is done by the end of the first act. At minute 30, it's a 98-minute documentary. And by minute 30, there's no more baseball. I mean, as far as Yogi playing, now there's obviously other, there's clips and stuff and there, but for the most part, I mean, a majority of baseball's, his career is wrapped up. And so, diving into the family stuff, diving into the love story with Carm, diving into the Steinbrenner stuff, and the whole public persona, people, he was a jokey, kind of funny guy. And I think society is uncomfortable when the jester is also the king, but Yogi was both, and society doesn't know how to, we can't wrap our brains around somebody being both funny and good, like in the film business in LA, comedies don't win Oscars, right? Because they're not good, they're not prestige or whatever. So there's this weird thing. And I've always been fascinated by that and that's a lot from my background too, being a comedy person, but also being, in the military and stuff like that, and kind of bouncing between worlds. So that's something I sunk my teeth into. And another big piece I sunk my teeth into being a veteran was just his service in World War II in Normandy. I mean, it's a big deal. I mean, it's a big deal to say, I can't swim, but I'm going to volunteer for the Navy, and I'm going to go, and I'm going to volunteer for D-Day, and so, it's just, that was something I really wanted to make a meal of. And I'm really proud of that section of the film.
Let me tell you the part of the flick where it got to be waterfalls for me. And that is, so again, 14 years, he doesn't come to the stadium, him and George, they apologize. God, I was moved by that itself. And then the Yogi Berra Day at the stadium. And it brought me back to a place and brought out emotions in me that I forgot that I had once had. You can't write. You would think this was
no. They throw the script away.
You would think this is ridiculous fiction on Yogi Berra Day. And you highlight this so well with the musical scores and everything. I swear to God, Sean, I'm not lying to you. I quite literally was crying. I was tears were rolling down my face in a good way during that part.
I have seen that sequence. First of all, thank you so much. That was the first sequence we cut. We knew that was going to be kind of the pinnacle kind of cathartic moment of the film. And so we cut that first. I have seen the film probably over 1,000 times. I actually still get I don't cry anymore, but I mean, I put the scene together. I made the film. I've seen it. I still get the chills. Watching it. So there's something, there's some sort of like emotional, just arithmetic that you can't deny about that moment. But no, it's really something special, and it's definitely, you know, I again, goes back to my Columbia Film School days. You know, we're taught as soon as you arrive, like all great stories go back to Aristotle, right? And it's crisis, catharsis. So first act crisis, third act catharsis. And so this, for us, this crisis was Yogi Berra has been overlooked. You know, he, you know, people don't see him, you know, in the way they should as a player and as a person. And, you know, the catharsis is people will never, ever forget, you know, who Yogi truly was. And so that arc of the film, you know, is how we, you know, from just a pure craft standpoint, that's how I put the film together. And that moment there of that Yogi Berra day is something that, you know, I think Jeter says it's a day he'll never forget as long as he lives. You know, he said it doesn't make sense, you know.
Doesn't make sense. And I don't want to give the scene completely away because I want people to go and I want you to watch it. I want you to feel for yourself. The one thing I will say is Don Larson, who you normally would leave a game early, sticking around, and Joe Girardi, without saying a single word, I think that might have been what set me off. I was only the third or fourth inning. I won't give anything else away, but just his face, that shot of his face completely got it going for me. At that point, I'm like legit crying. Anyway, just absolutely amazing. And then again, near the end, you know, as he's physically and health-wise deteriorating, and Carmen sadly actually ends up dying before him, but Dale telling the story of their last day. Again, I don't want to give, you know, too many specifics away here, but their last day together, Yogi and Carmen, and that story that Dale telling, and just, you know, the emotion and the crackling of his voice, that movie as well, man, just such beautiful, so beautifully told.
Thanks, man. No, that was one of those, you know, when you're making a documentary, you know, you've got hundreds of hours of footage to sift through, thousands when it comes to archival. And, you know, there are moments, you know, it gets long and it takes years. And I remember interviewing Dale telling that story about their last day together. And I was like, during the interview, I started welling up with tears. I'm like, you know, it's going to end up in the film. You know, that's the beauty of making a documentary. Is you do all this stuff and all these things, and then there'll be a moment where you're like, it's in the movie. I mean, I can see it in the film, and I know how it's going to play, and that's what you do all the work for, is those moments, you know.
Sure. And then the very last scene, which again, I'm crying happy tears from Yogi Berra Day, then very sad tears, and then I'm back at the end, dude. I'm like, I got like my fist pump going, involving the president of the United States. Just leave it at that. Again, fans, watch the flick and you'll know what I'm talking about. But what a great, strong way to a sentimental, good way to end this film, man. Just God, it just blew me away. I'm acting like a fanboy right now. This is crazy, Sean. And I've had Adam Schefter on this show. I've had so many, you know, media people, athletes, and whatever. I'm blown away. I'm humbled by watching this film. I'm just, you know, being a Yankees fan. It just opened up Pandora's box for me in so many ways. One last thing, somebody on your Twitter, actually went on your Twitter, left a tweet and you retweeted it. And I thought this was really poignant too, and really sticks with whether you're old, whether you're young. Someone named Dan Malin, he wrote on your Twitter, you retweeted, he said, "My dad is 93, just went down and got Netflix set up for him so he could watch. Happiest I've seen him in a long time." I feel that same way. You know what I mean? Happiest I've been watching anything Yankee related for sure in a very long time. And I started thinking to myself, whether you're middle-aged like me, whether you're old enough to have watched Yogi Berra and seen him play, or whether you're a young kid who's just coming up, you know, and mom and dad are Yankees fans, and now by default you're a Yankees fan, and you're starting to learn a little bit about the history of this team. You're not going to find a better film that's going to be more central about one of the best players to ever play this game, let alone the Yankees, than Yogi Berra, man. I'm just blown away. I'm out of questions. It's one way to go there, man. I'm completely blown away by this. Again, maybe the best, certainly sports documentary, just one overall, like you said, not even about sports. It's one of the best documentary, best films I've ever seen, man.
Well, thank you so much, man. This is really incredible, honestly. And you know, it's always nice too when, you know, you get a lot of you know, we've got, you know, Sony Pictures Classics is our distributor. They're a big distributor. You know, we bought the film, you know, or they bought the film from us out of the Tribeca Film Festival in 2022, and they've set up a lot of press for us, right? And we've talked to, and I was able to be on all these different shows and ESPN and all these different things, and they've been wonderful. But when an opportunity like this comes up where I just see a beautiful tweet from someone, I have no idea who they are, and I reply to you, cool. And then I send you a little DM message saying, hey man, I'd love to chat if you'd like to chat, and we set this up. It's a very organic way to spread the word about the film, and it makes me feel good. I just really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me, and I hope everyone out there listening gets a chance to check it. It's on Netflix for a bit, and we're in the conversation for the awards conversation for the Oscars, actually. And so I'm doing a screening with Billy Crystal in New York City, and I think there might be tickets available. I might as well put a little plug in. I think it's Thursday, December 7th in New York City. I'm scheduled. We're waiting for confirmation, I think, today on the actual theater and stuff. But yeah, I think Billy Crystal and I are going to do a Q&A in New York City, a screening of the film. So anyone in New York area wants to come out for that, there should be tickets left, hopefully. And yeah, I mean, we're just in it, but it's on Netflix and it's on Amazon, and just I appreciate the time. This has really been just a really wonderful interview.
Well, I wish you the best of luck when it comes to all that. And again, one more time for fans, if you haven't seen it already, go check it out. It ain't over. Netflix, Amazon. Thanks, Sean. Appreciate you very much. And appreciate everybody for watching and listening. Thank you very much. Be back with a brand new episode tomorrow. Talk to you then.